Welcome to this explainer. Today we are unpacking a truly fascinating, completely counterintuitive framework that emerged from a July 2026 recovery room at the ROFA Academy. We're going to be exploring what happiness and joy actually are, when they happen, why our usual approach to finding them might be completely backward, and how all of this is literally being used right now to revolutionize the world of addiction rehab. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's jump right in with a weird question. Why can't you tickle yourself to happiness? I know, it sounds like a total joke, right? But it's actually a profound paradox that completely disrupts how we think about our own emotions.
It basically comes down to this. Like tickling yourself, self-generated expectations cancel the reward before it lands. Think about it. You literally cannot tickle yourself because your brain's predictive machinery is so fast it anticipates the physical sensation and just cancels the signal. Well, the exact same neuroscience applies to forced happiness. When you manufacture these rigid, heavy expectations about how happy you think you should be feeling, your brain's forward models naturally attenuate that emotional reward. It makes forced happiness basically impossible to catch.
Section 1. Happiness versus joy. There is such a clear binary contrast here when we talk about chasing versus receiving. Happiness, it's an exhausting chase. It's totally based on external expectations and future results. Joy, on the other hand, is something you simply receive. It arrives naturally, it lives entirely in the present tense, and it's grounded in purpose and appreciation. You really don't chase joy, you just sort of receive it.
Imagine a giant ego-driven treadmill. That is the chase for happiness. You're sweating, you're calculating past and future outcomes, and you're trying to control everything. Contrast that with a natural flowing river. That's authentic joy. It doesn't demand specific results from the universe, it just requires a bit of humility to accept whatever comes up right now, in the present moment.
Section 2. The predictive mind. So, this brings us to a cognitive science concept called prediction error minimization, which honestly explains so much about human behavior. You know how we all have pessimistic tendencies sometimes? Well, they aren't just negative attitudes. They are actually your brain actively trying to protect you from the pain of failed expectations. By choosing a very predictable disappointment, a pessimist completely avoids the jarring, vulnerable risk of unpredictable happiness. It's a deep-seated survival mechanism.
But here's the magic. True joy arrives in what the Academy calls the unpredicted delta. It's that beautiful, surprising residual gap, a moment that happens only when reality actually exceeds our loosened internal models. And you know what? That only happens when we finally stop trying to control and predict every single outcome.
Section 3. Reification and Identity.
During these ROFA Academy sessions, one participant was dealing with the heavy trauma of identity theft, and this incredibly powerful phrase emerged: rumination digs dirty trenches. And man, that makes perfect sense. Constantly rehearsing your past trauma, just playing it over and over in your head, it literally digs deep, dirty trenches in your mind, anchoring you completely to the expectations of the past, rather than the reality of what's happening right now.
And that brings us to the danger of reifying our identity. We suffer immensely when we treat ourselves or even our partners as static, fixed brick walls. In one of the sessions, they talked about a woman who suffered through a terrible breakup simply because she expected her partner to suddenly change into this fixed, idealized version of himself. All her pain came from projecting a future expectation. The Academy flips this with the river metaphor. Your identity is a continuous, flowing process of change. The water's literally never the same from one moment to the next.
Looking at these authentic, handwritten notes from facilitator Valerie's morning session, you can see this in action. They're tackling real-world friction like identity fraud, right alongside the explicit instruction to release and let go of setbacks. Releasing these rigid, fixed ideas of who we are or what we've lost is exactly what sets us free to actually experience joy.
Section 4. Reinventing rehab. Now, how does all this philosophy apply to the real world? Well, facilitator Chris took this exact chase versus receive framework and used it to completely disrupt a broken, incredibly expensive addiction recovery industry.
Let's talk numbers. $30,000. That is the staggering cost of a traditional 28-day rehab program. But what's even crazier is that the sources cite a 70% recidivism rate for this model. So the traditional industry standard is incredibly expensive, and yet, statistically speaking, most people end up walking right back through those doors. Why? Because the root causes, the basic lack of stability and life skills, just aren't being addressed.
Enter the Academy's proposed alternative: $10,000. For a third of the cost, this is a much longer, 16-week program focused intensely on pro-social housing and anger management. And get this, it has a projected 60% success rate of actually keeping people from returning.
Let's break down exactly how this budget works, because it shifts the entire focus from short-term fixes to long-term community stabilization. First, $5,000 goes straight to providing 90 days of stable housing. Housing acts as the foundational substrate. I mean, you can't build a house on water, right? Then the remaining $5,000 pays for certified facilitation in cognitive behavioral therapy and moral recognition therapy. That's a system to improve decision-making and pro-social skills, prioritizing teaching people how to actually work together in the real world.
The systemic innovations here are just brilliant. The whole model relies on value-based insurance payments. That means insurers actually pay for the result of self-sufficiency, not just a set number of treatment days. It also introduces barter systems, so residents who maybe can't get traditional jobs right away can still contribute by driving ride shares or managing the house. It empowers them to build true self-sufficiency. Honestly, for the rest of us, it's a total masterclass in how shifting away from rigid expected outcomes can heal completely broken systems.
Section 5. The present tense. To maintain this stability, they teach some powerful present tense coping tools. Consider this incredible metaphor. While you're drinking the poison, you're the only one dying. Wow, this completely reframes the concept of forgiveness. It's not some grand moral gift you're handing over to an offender. It is a highly pragmatic, self-preserving tool to stop poisoning your own life. You let go of the anger simply so you can survive the present.
So, alongside instrumental forgiveness, what other tools do we have? Well, there's finding humor and a bit of well-placed sarcasm to diffuse those absurd, awkward situations life throws at us. There's drawing simple inspiration from nature, just taking a second to notice a flower or a bird to feel grounded. And my absolute personal favorite, when in doubt, do nothing. Sometimes just awkwardly standing there and waiting for a little more information is the best possible way to keep yourself anchored in the unpredicted joy of right now.
I want to leave you with this provocative thought. If your identity really is a flowing river, constantly changing day by day, exactly who are you expecting to be happy? If you treat yourself like a fixed object, you are setting yourself up for disappointment. Stop trying to tickle yourself, let go of the rigid expectations, and you just might find you finally have the space to receive the joy of the current moment. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.